Welcome to Bio with Aanchal. Now, this is a very important topic. In ICSE, it is there in your standard 7, standard 8, standard 10. And this topic is very important to understand how your entire system works and how is your entire system connected to the outside world. Right? So let us start with this topic. Before that, you know what you have to do? Like, share, and subscribe, and then proceed with the video. Now, in this chapter, we are going to study about the basic structure and function of the nervous system. Right? You can, that is introduction to your nervous system, then the structural unit of your nervous system. Then you have types of nerves, that is sensory, motor, interneuron, components of the nervous system, transfer of impulse in the nervous system, reflex actions. Okay, so this will cover the entire topic of yours. Now, you all can write in your comment section what you perceive in these images. Now, in the first image, you can see that your skin, your hand, basically feels so many things, right? You can understand the difference between a pat, a slap, or a punch. Correct? What makes you understand the difference between all these pressure, pain? Because there are certain receptors present on your skin, right? Then when you see the light, bright light, what we do? Then when you suppose you're ironing your school uniform and suddenly the iron touches your hand, right? Then the happiness that you feel playing with your friends, or the fear that you have to be just maybe you're writing the exam and then vigilator stands in front of you. Maybe those fears, or if um, you're playing the video games and the parents step in your room. Yes, so what are these and how do you feel all these things? We are going to study in this chapter. Understood. Now, when we talk about coordination, there are two types of coordination. One is the nervous coordination and one is chemical coordination. Now, the interlinking, what is coordination before that? Coordination is basically the interlinking of your metabolic activities. That is either you do it internally or externally. That is called coordination. Okay. Nervous coordination is possible because of your impulses, neurons, and your chemical coordination is because of your hormones, the endocrine system. Okay. So nervous system and the endocrine system works hand in hand to keep you the way you are. Right? But always remember, nervous system, brain is the boss of the body. Do not let your hormones take the control of your mind. Your brain has to be the controller of the entire system. Now, nervous system function. It keeps us informed about the outside world through the five sense organs. Please write the name of the five sense organs in the comment section. It enables us to remember facts, figures, things. Then it also helps us to think and reason out. How are you going to remember all this chapter for the examination? How are you going to remember the diagrams for your examination? That is because of your brain, your nervous system. It controls on and harmonizes all the voluntary and the involuntary activities of your body, which is under your wish or which is even not under your control. Right? Like for peristaltic movement, you take the food in your mouth and the food goes into your stomach, then the stomach starts churning, it moves in the intestine. The intestine does the peristaltic movement, sends it to the large intestine. That is not under our control. If you want to let my heart take rest today, is that possible? No, that's not possible, right? So all the voluntary and the involuntary actions are taken control by your nervous system. Now, when you talk about the structural and the functional unit of the nervous system, it is the neurons. So what is a neuron? Neuron is a structural and functional unit of the nervous system, a specialized cell for receiving impulses from one part of the body and conducting them to the other part. It can be another neuron, or it can be other gland, or it can be other muscles. Okay, so that is here you can see the diagram of the neuron, and obviously you can see the different structures. Now, neuron has got two types of structure you can see here. Yes. 1 minute, let me take the highlighter. Yeah, you can see. Now you can see here the head part. This is the head part here, which is called a cyton or the cell body or a perikaryon. There are so many words for it, right? It is called cyton, perikaryon, or the cell body. And the tail part, this part, is called the axon. Okay. Then the bundle of these axon is called nerve, and the group of these cytons are called ganglia. Remember the terms. Okay. It is also called soma, or the cell body. Excuse me, children. Now you can see here there is something called axon terminal. They are called axon terminal. They are called then knobs, axon terminal knobs, right? So these bulb-like structures, they basically, I'll show you the diagram later. They helps in the transmission of impulse from one neuron to the other, from one axon terminal to the dendrites of the next neuron. So the impulse comes in the direction of, it comes from the another, that is axon terminal. It comes to the dendrites, move into the cyton, moves to the axon, and finally it moves to the axon terminal to the next. Remember, two neurons are never in contact with each other. There's always a gap between it, which is called a synaptic cleft. Okay. Now, stimulus and response. Any sudden change in the environment of an organism which causes a reaction in that organism is known as a stimulus. Now, this sudden change in the environment can be the external environment change, or it can be the internal environment change. So, based on the internal and external environment change, stimulus can be of two types: external stimulus and internal stimulus. The reaction to the stimulus which your body gives is called a response. So it is you who is giving a response, and the stimulus is coming from the environment. Okay, so you can decide how your response should be. Yes, not always. I'm not talking about the general reactions or reflexes. Right, the responses is ours. We give the responses. So types of external, come to science back, come to the human biology. You can see types of external stimuli. There are mechanical, pressure, touch, motion, sound, vibrations. Thermal stimuli can be heat, cold, radiations. Chemical, any chemical that can give you any kind of stimulus. Then you have electromagnetic. These are all kinds of different types of stimuli. Then types of internal stimulus, your hunger, level of glucose is low in your blood, so you feel hungry. Level of water is low in your blood, you feel thirsty. Then you're tired, that is fatigue. Then you're scared, that is your fear. Then there are certain internal pains. Then there is blood glucose level. These are all types of internal stimuli. Okay? Now, impulse. What is impulse? Messages along the neuron travel in the form of wave of chemical disturbances. Why chemical here? It should be electrical disturbances. But chemical here because there are two ions responsible for the impulse conduction. That is sodium ion and potassium ion. So therefore, we can call it a wave of chemical disturbances. It should be electrical disturbances also. Understood? The chemical disturbances, these chemical or electrical disturbances is called impulse. It is like an electric signal. Okay. The neurons conduct nerve impulse. Always remember, like earlier we have studied in plants also, xylem helps in conduction of water. Phloem helps in translocation of food. Similarly, nervous system, neurons helps in conduction of nerve impulse or transmission of nerve impulse. Okay. Do not write messages and all. Now you can see here, there are two diagrams, right? Two pictures. In one case, you can see the impulse is getting lost somewhere, and the other case, you can see the impulse is flowing. Now, what is the difference between these two? Anyone? We have studied the structure of neuron, very important structure of neuron. From standard 6 to standard 10 ICSE, neuron diagram is asked. And you have to draw it very specifically, label it very correctly. 3 marks are generally for the diagram, where 1 mark is for proper diagram and 2 marks are for the correct label. Okay. The neuron conducts impulse via synapse. Two neurons conduct impulse through synapse, which is a gap between the two neurons. Okay. No point of contact is seen between the two neurons. I have already told you synaptic cleft, there is a gap between the two neurons. Synapse is a junction where communication between two neurons take place. Now you can see here the two neurons. The one which is before the synapse is called a presynaptic neuron. The one which is after, which is receiving the impulse, is called the postsynaptic neuron. And at the point of transmission of nerve impulse, you can see this is the presynaptic neuron's axon terminal, and this is the postsynaptic neuron dendrites. So you can see there is a gap, and whenever the impulse reaches here, there are certain neurotransmitters which help in conduction of these impulses from one neuron to the other by passing through the synaptic cleft. The neurotransmitters like acetylcholine is a very good example of a neurotransmitter. You can see how these things happen. As the impulse comes here, you can see that the neurotransmitter vesicles releases the neurotransmitters in the gap, which is received by the dendrites, and the impulse is then transmitted to the next neuron. Understood? I hope everything is clear. If not, put it in the comment section. I'll reply to your doubts. Now, there are three types of neurons in our body. Okay. Neurons, single unit of cell I'm talking about. I'm not talking about nerves right now. I'm talking about neurons right now. So here, three neurons, types of neuron. One is sensory neuron. Sensory S, it is connected to the sense organ. Okay. It receives the stimulus from the environment. The sensory neuron receives the impulse from the sense organ or the receptors. Sense organs are called receptors, and sensory neurons are also called afferent neurons because it is the arrival of the impulse to the nervous system. So, sensory neurons, also called afferent neurons, transfer the impulse to the interneuron, which is situated in the CNS, that is the central nervous system, spinal cord, or the brain. Now, in the spinal cord or the brain, the interneuron, there are many names for interneuron, okay? Interneuron is called interneuron, association neuron, relay neuron, okay? So, there are interneuron, relay neuron, association neuron, all are same. They transfer the impulse to the motor neuron, which is connected to the muscles or the glands or the effector organ. Effector organ matlab which will give the response, which will help you to make the response. Fine. So now motor neuron transmits the impulse from the sense organ, from the CNS, that is central nervous system, to the outside world. So sensory neuron is bringing the information to the CNS, and motor neuron is taking the information from the CNS. Understood? That is why motor neuron is also called efferent neuron. E for exit. Understood? So, what this is neurons. When so many neurons come together, they form nerves. So, a bundle of nerve fibers, axons of the separate neurons enclosed in a tubular medullary sheath is called a nerve. Sensory nerve, for example, your optic nerves. When you see things, right? You observe things, you are taking information to your brain. There is a lobe here which is called the occipital lobe, which is responsible for what your vision and all. So your eye takes the information from the outside world and transfers it to your brain through the optic nerves. So optic nerve is taking the information from your sense organ. It is an example of a sensory nerve. Then motor nerves, that is nerve going to the muscles of the eyeballs. Okay, here the muscles of the eyeball. Yeah, the word is missing here. 1 minute. The eyeballs. Okay. Now, what is this doing here? Eyeballs ka movement ke liye. Suppose your brain asks you to look at something. So you are moving your eye according to the position of the object. So your brain is sending information. You're sending command to your muscles of the eye. So it is a motor neuron. Mixed neuron are present in your tongue. Now, tongue is actually a kind of sense organ which is responsible for your taste. At the same time, when you want to speak, the movement of the tongue helps you to speak. So tongue is not only acting as a sense organ or receptor, it is also acting as an effector, which is bringing out words of your mouth. Right? That is how the tongue has got mixed now. Is that clear? Next one, you can see. Yes. Now here you can see central nervous system. This is your entire nervous system ka classification. Right. The central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system is your brain, brainstem, the spinal cord. Bus. Only these. Right. Then whatever comes out of your brain, from your brain, the cranial nerves are coming out. From your spinal cord, the spinal nerves are coming out. That is your peripheral nervous system. Understood. Now, peripheral nervous system, if you talk about, it has got what to say, it is attached to the organs which are under your control, and it is also attached to the organ which is not under your control. So, there are two types of nervous system associated with peripheral nervous system. One is autonomic, do not write automatic. Autonomic nervous system or autonomous nervous system. Autonomic nervous system is all the involuntary actions, right? So it has got two components, parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic S for stress, S for sympathetic. When your body is under stress, that time your sympathetic nervous system functions. It helps you to fight the stress. So your fight, fright, and flight, it is responsible. It is because of your sympathetic nervous system. Name the hormone which the sympathetic nervous system must trigger to let this stress action take place in your system. That hormone is also called a 3F hormone. Write the name in the comment section. Now, parasympathetic, now your stress condition is over. Then your parasympathetic nervous system brings down the body to the normal state. During the stress time, your heartbeat has increased, your respiratory system, respiratory rate has increased, your pupil has dilated, your breathing rate has increased. All right, you have turned pale because the blood flow has increased towards your muscles. So, all this will come back to the normal state because of the parasympathetic nervous system. Understood? So that is your autonomous nervous system. When you talk about the somatic nervous system is all the kind of voluntary actions, sensory informations, voluntary movements are controlled by somatic nervous system. There are two nerves responsible, cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Cranial nerves, there are 12 pairs of the cranial nerves that originate from your brain, and there are 31 pairs of the spinal nerve that originates from your spinal cord. Okay. Now, when you talk about the brain, let us talk about the central nervous system. So, it consists of the brain. Brain may what all you have forebrain and the hindbrain. Okay. And in between there is midbrain. So when you talk about the forebrain, it has got cerebrum, not cerebellum, cerebrum, the diencephalon is just below your cerebrum. There is a hard fibrous sheet-like structure which is called corpus callosum, which separates your left hemisphere and right hemisphere of your brain, and it helps in coordination between these two. Even pons help in coordination between the two hemispheres. Okay. So thalamus and hypothalamus is located below that corpus callosum. And then at the base of the hypothalamus, there is a small gland which is called the pituitary gland, which is the master gland. And what controls this master gland? It is controlled by the hypothalamus. I hope you know all this, right? Any doubt? Put it in the comment section. Endocrine presentation is already there. If you have any doubt related to what I am talking about, pituitary, hypothalamus and all, you can go to the endocrine system presentation and you can understand that easily. Then midbrain is a very small part of your total brain. Below that, there is a hindbrain, which has got cerebellum, a leaf-like structure, cerebellum. And there is a what is extension kind of structure from the cerebrum that is called that has pons and medulla oblongata, and then finally the brain stem, which opens up in the medulla, which opens up in the spinal cord. We'll understand the structure. Do not worry. And the second part of the central nervous system is the spinal cord. So we'll go in detail about the brain and the spinal cord. Right? Now, brain. What is the location of the brain? It is inside the skull. Skull is this hard, bony structure. So the bony structure which protects your brain is called the skull. And then your brain is enveloped in three membranes. Remember DAP, DAP, DAP. DAP is what? Dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater. These are the three meninges. Any inflammation in these meninges causes brain fever, also called meningitis. This is a word used for inflammation. So whenever there is inflammation in any part of your body, it is called tis. Like bronchitis, that is your bronchioles, nephritis, your nephrons, right? Then you have conjunctivitis, meningitis. All these are inflammable disease, inflammation in the specific organs. So the three membranes of your brain is called meninges, that is dura mater, arachnoid, and pia mater. CSF is the fluid present in these membranes, extended to your spinal cord also. Meninges and these cerebrospinal fluid are extended to the entire CNS. Okay, so your spinal cord also has the membrane surrounding and filled with a fluid which is called cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid. Parts of the brain that you have to remember is cerebrum, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata. You should know the function of all these three parts very carefully. Cerebrum, it is the largest portion of your brain. It is divided into two hemispheres, as I have already told. Cerebral hemisphere, that is right and left hemisphere. You can see here, this pink part I was talking about, that is corpus callosum, which divides the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere. Then you can see here, this part is the diencephalon. Then you have the thalamus and this is the thalamus and this is the hypothalamus. The base of the hypothalamus, there is pituitary gland. This yellow part is the cerebellum, and this extension from this is actually the pons, then medulla, and then the brainstem. Understood? This is the structure of your brain. Then next, it has ridges. You can see here, cerebrum has got folds and ridges. These folds and ridges are basically important to increase the surface area of the brain, right? And it helps, it is supposed to be said, it is supposed to be responsible for your intelligence. Okay, so this is the ridges are called gyri and the grooves are called sulci. That is a plural. Singular is gyrus and sulcus. Then gray matter, your brain, remember, brain is a coconut. Dark outside, white inside. And spinal cord is just opposite to the brain. It is white outside and gray inside. Will you remember this? Gray matter spelling can be Gray. Grey is also written in many of the textbooks. White matter axon is inside. You can remember Chhattisgarh. Chhattisgarh means C for cyton and G is gray matter. So always remember, gray matter is made up of cyton and white matter is made up of axon. Okay, wax. Okay, wax. That is why white matter is made up of axon and Chhattisgarh. That is cyton is there in the gray matter. So gray matter basically has all the cell body of the neurons and white matter has got all the axons of the neuron. It is a seat. I have missed T here. Seat of intelligence, consciousness, and willpower and voluntary activities. That is the function of the cerebrum. Then cerebellum, it is much smaller. You can see here this leaf-like structure. Compare the size. It is much smaller than the cerebrum. It is located under the cerebrum. It controls the body balance and muscle coordination, and it gets affected by alcohol. That is the reason why a person who is drunk cannot walk properly, because the cerebellum, which is responsible for control and coordination of the muscles, is affected. So the person cannot walk properly. Understood? Then medulla oblongata. It is the lowest part of the brain, located at the base of the brain and continues into the spinal cord. It controls all the involuntary actions, your heartbeat, your respiratory rate, your peristaltic movement. Any involuntary action is taken care of by the medulla oblongata. If the medulla oblongata is injured, it leads to sudden death. It leads to immediate death. This is also there in hanging processes and all that is done by the officials, punishment and all. It is the medulla oblongata which gets injured or it is being, what to say, hampered. Okay, so in that case, there is the immediate death is seen if medulla is injured. It controls all the in vital organs are also controlled by medulla oblongata. Then you have spinal cord. It extends from the middle of the brain and run down almost to the whole length of your backbone. Here it's ulta. Gray matter, here I've written the different spelling because both the spellings are used in many of the textbooks. I have used both the spellings in my presentation. Gray matter, Cyton. This will not change. Chhattisgarh will remain Chhattisgarh only. So Cyton, gray matter is inside and white matter is outside. Function is to control reflexes below the neck, conduct impulse from the skin and the muscles to the brain, and it also conducts impulse from the brain to the muscles and the trunk and the limbs. So all the information is relayed from the brain through the spinal cord to the different parts of the body. Okay. Reflex action, when you talk about reflex action is what? Reflex action is a sudden response that you give. Now, for example, you're moving around in the kitchen and suddenly you touch a hot object. You just remove your hand. You're walking in the garden and suddenly you step on a sharp stone. Then you jump from that place. So why? If something comes close to your eyes, we close your eyes. Or somebody tries to hit you, just put your hand to protect yourself. So any kind of protective function basically is there for the reflex actions. So reflex action may you have the diagram is so clear to you, I guess. You touch the pin is the stimulus here. The pin, the skin acts as a receptor, receives the stimulus, pass it to the sensory neuron, which goes to the interneuron. From the interneuron moves to the motor neuron. Motor neuron makes your hand move away from the pin. That is the effector muscles. Peripheral nervous system. I think reflex action should have come a little later, but there is some. Anyway, we'll get back to the reflex action again. Peripheral nervous system is what? Now, since reflex action is a work of spinal cord, that is why it was included in the CNS. Okay, we talk about peripheral nervous system now, and then we'll talk in detail about the reflex actions. It includes nerve which carry impulse from the autonomous nervous system to the autonomous nervous system from the CNS. Okay, it has two components: somatic nervous system and the autonomous nervous system. Right. So here, peripheral nervous system basically carry impulse to the CNS and the SNS. That is from the ANS. I'm so sorry, children. I'll repeat once again. It includes the nerve which carry impulse from the CNS, that is from your central nervous system, brain and spinal cord, to your outside world, that is your SNS, somatic nervous system, and autonomous nervous system. It has got two components, that is somatic nervous system. There is cranial nerves 12 pairs, spinal nerves 31 pairs, and autonomic nervous system, which is parasympathetic and sympathetic. Now, when you talk about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, it is generally during the stress, that is fight or flight, even fright, that is being scared. So dilation of pupil, increased heartbeat, relaxes airways, inhibits digestion. Whenever you are under stress, the first thing that stops is your digestive system. Okay, the digestive system stops, and that is why you feel dryness in the throat. Your food does not get digested. During the exam time, you'll find that you're not able to digest the food properly, right? You don't feel like eating also. That is because during the stress, the digestive system stops functioning. And when the stress is over, that is your rest and digest, that is after the stress time is over, it constricts the pupil, decreases the heartbeat, constricts the airways, stimulates digestion, and bring back your body to the normal condition, brings the balance back. Okay, you can see certain activities that is going on: constriction of pupil, stimulates saliva, slows heartbeat, then stimulate activity of stomach. This is all there in parasympathetic. Sympathetic is dilate pupil, inhibit salivation, increase heartbeat, relaxes airways so that more and more air can go into your lungs. Right, inhibits activity of the stomach, inhibits gallbladder, inhibits activity of the intestine. Right, this is relaxes bladder. So sometimes you get scared and urination happens. That is also because the bladder muscles, the muscles are all relaxed. Right, that happens in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Then what is the difference between a voluntary action, involuntary action, and the reflex actions? Now, when you talk about the voluntary action, that is on your will, what you want to do, that is a voluntary action. Actions performed by our will. Involuntary actions, that is the action which is taking place on its own. You don't you are not commanding it to happen. Like you're not commanding your heart to beat. You're not commanding your lungs to function. You're not commanding your intestine to do the peristaltic movement. That is an involuntary action. And reflex action is an immediate automatic response to the stimulus. Immediately, but in fraction of seconds you respond, and that is called your reflex action. Control, if you talk about voluntary actions, are controlled consciously. You want to do that thing, so you are consciously thinking about it and doing it. Involuntary actions, that is, even if you're not conscious, things are happening on its own. Reflex action is not under your conscious control. These are not consciously, withdrawing your hand when you touch a hot object. Right. Then voluntary action, cerebrum is the center of control. Involuntary actions, mein, you have medulla oblongata and also the autonomic nervous system that is responsible. Reflex action, mein, remember it is spinal cord which is responsible. Speed of action, voluntary actions is usually slow. Involuntary actions are slow and are rhythmic. They happen at a regular interval of time. And reflex actions are very fast. Purpose is voluntary is for your deliberate activities. You want to write, you're writing. Your involuntary actions are to maintain the body functions. And reflex action is for protection and survival. Always remember, if you have to classify certain actions under reflex actions and involuntary actions or voluntary actions, you should see that is it protecting you or it is important for your survival. Then it comes to reflex action. Example of voluntary action: writing, walking, speaking, dancing. Right. Involuntary actions, breathing, heartbeat, digestion, this is all your involuntary actions. Peristaltic movement is also involuntary actions. And reflex action is withdrawal of hand from touching a hot object. That is your applying brake when you see someone in front of your car or a vehicle. That is also a reflex action. Then what is the difference between inborn reflexes and conditioned reflexes? Always remember, natural reflexes means what you are born with. Okay, what you are born with, that is your natural reflexes. And conditioned reflexes is what you acquire in your lifetime, what you have learned in your lifetime in simple terms. So reflex action present from birth: closing your eye, blinking your eye, coughing, sneezing, vomiting. These are all actions which we are born with. Right, but reflex action developed by learning and experiencing is what you call about conditioned reflex. Pavlov Pavlov was a scientist who has worked with the conditioned reflexes, where he has taken a dog who used to salivate. Now, dogs, you know that when they are given food, they will salivate. So what Pavlov did, he used to ring a bell when he used to give food to the dog. So he conditioned the mind of the dog in such a way that whenever the bell was rung, the dog assumed that the food will be given. So the dog starts salivating. Even if the food was not there, the dog started salivating. That is, the scientist has conditioned the mind of the dog that the food will be given with the bell sound. Understood. Even when you think you smell good food or you see the picture of the food, then also you tend to have that feeling of having the food or salivation happens. That is all conditioned reflexes. Understood? Then natural reflexes are basically inherited. We are human beings, we have inherited from our ancestors. They're innate. Innate means we are born with it. And conditioned reflexes we learn during our lifetime. There's no training required for the natural reflexes, but there's regular practice and even repetition is required for conditioned reflexes. Center of control is natural reflexes is mainly spinal cord. Your spinal cord, turant that action will happen. You touch a hot object and turant your hand will be removed. That is, you are born with to protect yourself. It is protective in function. But when you talk about conditioned reflexes, your cerebrum is very much involved along with the spinal cord. You're learning it. You're thinking about it. You're first, for example, tying a shoelace. You learned how to tie a shoelace. When you are young, you used to see, put each and every thread together and then put a knot. But now you can easily talk. You can do any other activity, speak to your sibling, and at the same time, you can tie your shoelace. So that is, you have learned. all individual of the species give the same type of reflexes, that is innate reflexes or natural reflexes, but conditioned reflexes can be different for different individuals. Usually permanent, natural reflex is usually permanent, but conditioned reflex may disappear if it is not reinforced. Right? Suppose you know to cycle now in the childhood, after 25 years, if you take cycle, you'll need some time to start it again. Example, withdrawal of the hand from a hot object, blinking of eye, sneezing, vomiting. These are the example of natural reflexes. Salivation on hearing the school lunch bell. The fear on seeing doctor or needle, playing guitar or any musical instrument. That is all conditioned reflexes. I hope the difference is clear. Any doubt, put it in the comment section. Now, reflex arc. Arc is what? In mathematics, we have studied arc, part of a circle, right? So here you can see the sensory neuron, the interrelay, that is interneuron or the association neuron, and the motor neuron makes the reflex arc. Okay. Now, what is reflex action? I told you I'll come back to it with the definition. This is very important. Any word missing, no marks for the definition. It is an automatic, quick, immediate response to a stimulus without the involvement of the brain, controlled by the spinal cord. Now, automatic, you can also write here involuntary. It's an involuntary response. That is, you're not doing it voluntarily. So, involuntary should also be here. So, write down if you're taking notes. Reflex action is an automatic, quick, immediate, involuntary response to a stimulus without the involvement of brain, controlled by the spinal cord. A reflex, I think I will add it here so that you don't miss it out. Right here. Okay? Involuntary. Till the time, you can please take the definition. Involuntary. Okay? It's better. A reflex arc is the shortest route that can be taken by an impulse from a receptor to an effector. Now, what is this route? Stimulus, receptor in the sense organ, afferent sensory nerve fiber or the neuron, spinal cord, efferent motor nerve fiber or effector, and then the effector muscle. So, learn this pathway also. Very important. Moving to the next, what are some examples like touching a hot object? Hand withdrawn quickly is your response. What are the receptors? Heat and pain receptors in the skin, and effectors are the arm muscles. Bright light falling on your eye. Pupil constricts. Photoreceptors in the retina are the receptors, and iris muscles, which helps in. There are two types of muscles present in your eye: the radial muscles and the circular muscles. They help in contraction of the pupil. Then pricking with the pin, hand pulled away, pain receptors in the skin, arm muscles, smell of tasty food, salivation is the response, olfactory receptors of your nose, and salivary glands are the effective effectors. Loud sound, blinking of the eyes, something falls, and you do like this. This is your auditory receptors in the ear, and the effector muscles are your eyelid. Right? This is your some examples of reflex actions. Then there are certain important definitions. You can pause the slide here and you can write all the definitions. These are very important. Kindly write down. I'll say that write down the definition. Stimulus, an agent or a sudden change of the external or the internal environment that results in the change in an organism or any of its body part. Response, the change in an organism resulting due to stimulus. Impulse, a wave of electrical disturbances that runs through the nerves. A short definition. Receptor is the specialized epithelial cells which on receiving the stimulus sets up the wave of impulse toward the CNS, that is central nervous system. Effector muscles or glands which on receiving the impulse from the brain or the spinal cord contracts or secretes substances. Then reflex action is a quick, immediate, automatic, involuntary response to the stimulus without the involvement of the brain, controlled by the spinal cord. Reflex arc, the shortest pathway of the nerve impulse from the receptor to the effector, which makes the reflex action possible, is called reflex arc. Synapse is the gap junction between the axon terminal and the neuron, and the dendrites or the cell body of the next neuron across the nerve impulse. Okay, you can also take a screenshot but I don't want you to miss out the involuntary part here. So kindly write here. It's automatic, matlab involuntary only. Please write here involuntary. Okay, I have written it there also. You write it here. Involuntary. Writing is difficult, but it's okay. Okay, write down. You can take a screenshot here. That will be also helpful. Okay. Moving to the next, neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the chemical substances that transmit nerve impulse across the synapse. Example is acetylcholine. Please mark it important. Okay, neurotransmitters. This is all for the nervous system. Thank you for watching and keep learning with BioWise with Aanchal. Any other doubt, put it in the comment section. I'll be happy to help. Thank you so much, children. Have a lovely day.